Hey everybody, welcome to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and on behalf of Studio One Expert, I want to welcome you to the Beginner's Guide to Learning Presonus Studio One version 3. These short videos are going to be a no fuss, no muss, direct to the point to show you how to get up and running in Studio One quickly and easily so you can start making music in your home studio, whether you're coming from another DAW or whether this is the first time you've had any experience with any digital audio workstation. These videos in this series are intended to try to help you with no experience get up and running very quickly. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the last section of the edit screen here. In the song view here, we're going to take a look at our console view and some of the different functions and what some of these buttons do so you can customize the look of your console. So if we take a look down here in the bottom left hand corner here, let's first start off with let's close all that. So let's first start off with the little X here in the top left hand corner. Now what this X is going to do is just going to open and close the console. So if I click that, the console goes away and you're looking at just a larger view of real estate on the edit screen. If I come over to the bottom right hand corner of the screen and click the mix button, it'll open the console view back up. The little arrow next to this is a detach button. If you click this, what this does is it makes our console now a floating window that you can resize and you can position anywhere on the screen that you would like. Or what this is most commonly used for, I would think, is if you had a second monitor in your studio where you can drag this to a second monitor so your edit screen is on one monitor and your console is on, or your mixer is on a different second computer monitor. And we can reattach that just by clicking in the top right hand corner, click that arrow again, and as you can see it says attach, and that brings it right back here. Underneath that we have our I/O box. If we click this, this will open up our song setup box. Again, you can do this in many different ways in Studio One. This is another way to do it, where you'll have all your inputs and all your outputs to set up your routing for your audio interface, which we will take a look at probably in the next video or two. Underneath this, we're going to have right next to the I/O, we'll have this little drop down triangle. This is going to allow us either add a bus channel, an effect channel, or a VCA track. And we'll talk about what all those are in another video. But if I click add a bus channel, you see a bus channel ends up here in the mixer view. And if I VCA, you'll see there's a VCA track. So we'll get into in later videos what all those tracks are and what are the differences between them. Underneath that, we have this little wrench. We click on this little wrench, and this will give us a way to say it'll give us kind of a way to customize the way we view our tracks inside of our console. So the first one here is keep all the effects channels to the right hand side, which means if I were to click this off, let's first add an effects channel here, which we didn't do. So now we have a bus track, a VCA, and an effects. So and you can see here to the left of those, we have two audio tracks. So keeping the effects channels to the right means that it'll keep it to the right hand side of any audio or instruments tracks that are in your console view. If I unclick this, then I can take this effects channel and I can drag it and move it anywhere I want in the track view. So now you can see I moved it to the left of the audio tracks next to it, or I can just left click and highlight it and drag it back. If I were to check that box and now try to move this over to the left, it won't allow me to do it. It's going to keep it to the right because we have that box checked that says keep our effects channels to the right. Same thing here underneath, we have keep our bus channels to the right or keep our VCA channels to the right. So this will give you a way to customize the way you look at your tracks in your console view here. I typically like to have all my audio tracks to the left and keep my bus channels, my VCAs, and my effects channels to the right of that. So normally I would have these three checked off. But you don't have to. You can have them any way you want, but that's what these boxes do. Preserve the order of the channels with the folder track. So what that means is if we have two tracks here, and if we were to highlight the first one, hold shift, highlight the second one, and then right click, you see this thing called pack to a folder. Again, we'll look at this in later videos. So now we put those two tracks in a folder. Okay, now by unclicking that, what that means is if I decide to move this, let's say this one track all the way over to the left, you can see that it now switched the order of the audio tracks inside of the folder view, if that makes sense. And if I were to move this all the way back to the left, you can see now that this brown track, Blues Lick, or Bad Luck Blues, moved to the top of the Acoustic Sun track. And that's because I unchecked this. If I were to check this, what that's going to do is, again, if I were to move this all the way over, Okay, and then if I were to move it back over here, you can see that it keeps it preserved. So in other words, the order of the tracks here are going to be the same order as they are inside of the folder, if that makes sense. So if I were to move this over, you can see now the brown track goes ahead of the gray track. If I were to move this back, it'll switch. So anytime I reorder the tracks here in the console view, it's going to reorder them in the folder view, because I said I want to preserve the orders of the channels. So when I'm looking, if you had, let's say, a bunch of tracks down here on the console view, and let's say it was a drum kit where you had a kick, a snare, hi-hats, overheads, and toms, the order of the tracks that you have them down here will be the same order that will appear in the folder. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So that's our grouping. For visibility, we can link the show hide of the track list and the console. So what that means is, and we'll get to this in a second when I get down here and we take a look at the track list. We talked about this in the last video. You can look at the listing of the tracks here, same as you can link them, you can look at them over here. It's the same, it's just a different view, same thing, view in a different view. So if we were to, let's see, if we were to list the show. Okay, so if we hide the tracks here, okay, you're going to see it's going to hide it in the console. See how I did by clicking the little circle, it makes them visible and invisible both in the edit section of the screen and also in the console view. Okay, because we had that option checked. So it kind of follows it, mimics it. Now you don't have to do that. You can keep them still visible, let's say in the console, but take them off the edit screen if you wanted to free up some real estate. That's another option for you. You can link, expand, and collapse of folders, tracks which show and hide. Again, that's pretty self-explanatory. You could colorize the channel strips. If we take that off, that means that only thing that will change colors will be the bottom of the track. If I were to just left click on this, I can change that to say pink, but you can see that the face of the channel strip will be grayed out. If I want to color code that, I come down to the wrench and I click colorize tracks, and now you can see that the whole channel strip is the same color as the bottom of the track itself. Show VCA connections. If I were to uncheck this, let me see, let's first go ahead and let's send this to a VCA. So if I highlight a track here, let's say this gray track, Acoustic Sun, and right click and say add selected tracks to VCA faders. What that means is it's going to add a VCA fader to this. And if I were to, where's the VCA? Right here. No, I'm sorry, right here in the red. So right here, you could see that now this track is linked to this VCA fader. Okay, and it will show it here. It says VCA2. It's linked to VCA2. Okay, so all it does is just going to show you, and now you can see you don't see it. Even though it's still linked, you don't see the connection here in the bottom. It doesn't show you that it's linked. That's all that does. So again, it's just a way to get some visibility. Again, here it is VCA2 and it's linked to the VCA. Okay, so that's just all for grouping and for visibility. How do you want to see the tracks as they correlate to the tracks in the mixer view as well as on the edit screen? So that's all your options under the little wrench here. Okay, this, let's go ahead and let's close this for a second. This will expand our mixer by clicking these up and down arrows, and we'll be able to come over here, move our cursor above the top of the mixer, and we can left click and we can stretch it out and we can expand it all the way up to the top of the screen. And as we're adding lots of plugins and inserts here, you'll see them all listed in this view. And here's all our sends. We can just left click that and drag that up or down. Okay, so this gives us an expanded view vertically for our mixer view. Okay, we can click that, I'll close that down, and now you'll see the edit screen again. And if we click the little triangles underneath it, we can get real small, narrow faders, or track view, or normal wide. If you have tons and tons of tracks, depending on the size of your computer screen, it might be helpful to shrink them up so you can see more tracks in your field of view. The inputs will show you all the inputs that you have set up in your for your audio interface in the audio routing and I/O input screen, which we'll talk about in another video. Same thing with the outputs. If there were any outputs, it would be over here to the right-hand side of right next to the main master output, but we don't have any outputs set up right now. And we'll do that in the next video. We have our trash. Is anything that would be in our trash bin, and you can see a couple of videos ago I had a plugin that I had on one of the tracks and I removed it. Well, it threw it into the trash bin. external. Here's any external hardware controllers you might have. In my case, I have a fader port, a Presonus fader port hooked up, but if you had MIDI controllers hooked up, it would be here. These are the external devices, and we'll talk about how we hook those up in a future video. And then any instruments that we have, software instruments that we have, will be in the instrument bin here. Below that is what we looked at a few seconds ago, which is our track list here, okay? And we can look in our console in many ways. Right now we have the audio tracks highlighted. So if I were to unclick all these, you'll see all the tracks go away in our console view. So if I want to look at just my audio tracks, I click the audio icon, and here's my 2 audio tracks. If I click the one in the center here, this is the instrument track. Now we don't have any instruments loaded onto this yet, so that's why you don't see anything here. Here's our effects. If we click that, you can see we have our effects track that I added a few minutes ago here. Here is our buses. Okay, our bus tracks here. And here is our VCAs that we added here. Okay, and if we wanted to look at all of them, we would just highlight all of them. And now you can see everything all at once. Okay, over here in remote, this is if you have any hardware controlled service controlling Studio One, you would use the remote. This will give you access to be able to control everything in Studio One via a hardware controller, which I do not have, but that's what that button is right there. Underneath here, what do we have down here? This is a store a preset. So if we click the plus or minus, you can set up your console to look a certain way, and you can store it as a preset. So in other words, you can have the wrench here, well, let's cancel this for a second. You can create a scene, and you can have, all these things set up visibly the way you want to see it, and you can save it in what we call a scene or a preset, where next time you come back and do a mix, you can call up that preset and all these settings will be set for you. So there might be different types of applications where maybe in certain kinds of sessions you want to have things looking and customized one way or another from a visibility point of view. I don't personally use that, but I know people that do, and that's very helpful, again, to speed up your workflow. It's like setting up a template for the way you look at your console. Okay, so now if we scroll over here to the top, we have our mute button here. If we were to mute some of our tracks here, you'll see that we have a global, it shows that there's things that are muted. If I click the mute, it'll unmute all of those. Oh, this was a VCA. It'll unmute those audio tracks just by clicking once. It'll unmute both of them. Okay, if I were to solo these up, you can see the solo button lights up. If I click that, the solo button goes out. This here, you can click this drop down, and this will change the height of our track view. So if we were to click on, say, small, you can see our tracks up top here get smaller. We can go all the way to minimal, which if you have a ton of tracks, you can really shrink them down to where you can't even see them. That's kind of not very useful in my opinion, but it's there. Or you can go medium. You can go all the way up to extra large, which will really blow the track up if you want. I usually keep it somewhere around normal. Okay, next to that gives you, if you were to left click here, you have a manual slider where you can globally, manually change, you can size the tracks however you want. Okay, and as I'm changing, you can see the box to the left is going between tiny and small and normal and large and extra large. Okay, so that's just another way to do this manually. And then over to the right of that, you can see we have our scroll bars here, the scroll our edit screen. That's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so that's kind of the look at all of the stuff on this side of the console here. So now if we just take a look quickly at the channel strip here, you can see, again, this is pretty self-explanatory. We have our inputs for every track. And this is all set up in the I/O screen, which we'll take a look at in another video. We can change our outputs here. You can send the track out to the main outs. In this case, we can send it to bus 1 or effects 1 because we added a bus and an effects track. Okay. We have our manual panning that we can pan left, right, center. We have obviously our fader to move up and down. And then we have our mute, our solo, our audio monitor, record, and this is our channel editor. If we click this button, our channel editor comes up here, which again we will look at in future videos. And then here, by clicking this little triangle, this will open up our insert and our send bank. Okay, so if you just want to add inserts here, you can go over to your browser and you can open up your effects, as we talked about in another video, and you can drag effects onto the track just by doing a drag and drop. Okay, or we remove this for a second. click the triangle and just say remove all, it'll take them all away. Or we can click the little plus button and we're going to get the same kind of thing. We're going to get our browser, a little mini version of our browser. So if we wanted to open up our thing here and we wanted to take our, say, our beat delay, we just click on it, it automatically adds it to the insert bank and it opens up the plugin on the screen so you can tweak the parameters. If you want to remove it, you just click this triangle and hit remove and it goes away, which is kind of cool. Same thing for sends. Because we have a bus and an effects channel here in our console view, we can send this acoustic sun track. We can send it to one of the other tracks. So something like sending it to a reverb or a delay, which we'll show you in future videos, is a common thing to do with a send. And then by closing this, you close and open and close the effects view. Down here in the bottom here, you'll see that this is again set up to go to a VCA fader because we did that a few seconds ago as an example. This little icon shows you that it's an audio track as opposed to an instrument track, which has a different icon. The track number, this happens to be track number 1. And then down here, we can double click and we can change the name of the track if we choose to. We can also just one left click and we can change the color of the track. As I showed you earlier, just one left click down in the name and we can change the color to whatever we want. So that's how, working with the individual tracks kind of work. If we head on over to the right side of this console view, we have a couple of different things here. We have this zoom where we can zoom in and out on the edit screen just by dragging this, or the shortcuts for this, which I use all the time, are the W key is the zoom out and the E key is the zoom in. And you can see as I'm doing that, this little slider is moving along here. Okay, really good to learn your shortcuts. Okay, over here, we can click on this little, it's hard to see it, but this little icon here. This will give us the ability to zoom in on the audio waveforms here. As you can see, manually you can zoom in to see the audio a little clearly. So if you were, say, zoomed all the way out and you wanted to take a look at something in more finer detail, you can come down here and you can zoom in, which is kind of neat. If I hold the W key, it will zoom all the way out again. And then we have our master main out fader here where we can turn our metronome on and off just by clicking this on and off here. It'll turn the metronome on and off when we go into play. We can again choose the outputs here on our audio interface. Again, we'll show that to you in the I/O portion of this video. We can change it from mono to stereo. Okay, so we can sum everything to mono to check our mix in mono, which is very helpful. And again, we have a mute and solo buttons here as well. We can mute all the tracks or we can solo up all the tracks just by clicking that. Okay, and then again, we have our fader, pretty self-explanatory. And then over here again, we got our channel editor, which we can open just by clicking there. And then our triangle, once again, we can also put effects on our main master output. This is pre and this is post, where you put things like a limiter. Okay, so that is the basic walkthrough of the console and kind of how you use it and how you can kind of customize things to look the way you want it to look. We'll get in a lot more detail as we move forward, but that's the basic overview. So I urge you to kind of go through and spend some time with it and kind of learn what works best for your workflow. So I hope this video was helpful. For more tips, tricks, concepts, techniques, and training around everything home recording, be sure to head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and also be sure to stay tuned to StudioOneExpert.com, as there's everything you need to know about Presonus Studio One is on StudioOneExpert.com. Head over there frequently because they're constantly adding more content to that site to help you get more proficient and have a great training resource for everything Presonus Studio One. So until the next video, this has been David Vignola with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and I will speak to you guys all soon. Take care.